Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly livestock market update. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Megan Grebner with us as always to talk all things markets, University of Missouri ag economist Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Megan.
As you can see, I am outstanding in my field. We're home helping bring in some 2021 harvest, and I took some time to chat with you this afternoon, but not really a big week for us.
That's right. Pretty quiet week. Only restaurant performance index beyond the normal markets.
All right, so let's recap what happened this week in the markets.
Yeah, starting on the cattle side, cash cattle this week were down $1. Those feeder cattle markets were steady to $3 lower this week. On the futures side, the December live cattle futures contract was down $2.60, while the November feeder cattle futures contract also down $5.50 this week. If we look at the corn side, December corn futures were up nearly 17 cents. I think part of the reason for some lower feeder cattle futures, as well as then what was cattle on feed report from last week. On the beef side, choice box beef prices fell nearly $11 this week. We saw some pretty good cuts in ribs, loins, and briskets this week, really driving that choice box beef price lower. On the hog side, cash barrel and gilt prices were $2 higher this week. The December lean hog futures contract was up a little more than $8. That's some carryover from last week's hogs and pigs report that gave us some positive news. On the pork cutout value, we gained $8.30 this week. Hams and bellies both were strong this week.
When we talk about the hams and bellies specifically, we saw really a strong export sales report and a lot of pork going to Mexico. I'm assuming a lot of that has to do with that strength in hams that we've seen recently.
Yeah, that's right. Those ham prices certainly reacted to the positive trade news with Mexico that we've seen. And yeah, most of that product was certainly hams.
All right, let's talk hog weights this week and weekly slaughter, or not, sorry. Let's talk slaughter this week as we take a look at, I have been working harder in the last 48 hours than I think I'm used to with my office job. So let's go ahead and talk slaughter numbers this week.
Yeah, down with you. So for the week ending October 2nd, cattle slaughter are estimated by USDA at 637,000 head. That's 4,000 less than where we were a week ago, and 27,000 head less than where we were a year ago. So down a little more than 4% relative to a year ago. So pretty light week in terms of cattle slaughter. On the hog side as well, so 2.524 million head of hogs to be slaughtered this week. That's a 54,000 head cut from where we were a week ago, and an 88,000 head cut from where we were a year ago. When you look at those year-to-date numbers, cattle slaughtered up 3.3%, while hog slaughter down 1.8%.
Scott, you mentioned at the start of things, really kind of a quiet week for us. Restaurant performance numbers is where we're going to focus our attention today. And are we a little concerned as we take a look at these numbers in this report?
Yeah, so you look back. I mean, a couple of things I'll say as we get started into the numbers. So you have to go back to April. We were at a restaurant performance index of 106.3. We fell in May, flat basically in June and July, and now another cut here of 1.1%. So August down 1.1% relative to where we were in July. You look at the current situation index, it's down nearly 1%. So same store sales, customer traffic, labor, capital expenditures, all of those components of that current situation index were down. It's the lowest level we've seen that current situation index since March of this year. Similarly, for the expectation side, it was also down nearly 1%, as I think the growth in the economy that's been slowing of late continues to make a drag in terms of what are those expectations moving forward. So not a lot of good news out of that report. And I will say again, you even go back a little further, and we've been fairly flat relative to that restaurant performance index.
Scott, we talk a lot about demand, and as we look at a restaurant performance index report like that and concerns about domestic, we talked about this briefly last week, but we saw the launch of an alternative pork or an alternative meat product to look at the pork side of things. how much are we watching what, not just the pork fake meats, but the others? How are we watching how that plays into that whole demand picture domestically?
So I think it's one we have to keep our eye on. I often start by saying, I think the primary demand for that plant-based alternative is probably a consumer that wasn't consuming beef or pork anyway. And so maybe there's not so much crowding out generally as a result of those introductions. Now, if those two uh, start fighting with each other, i.e., the plant-based alternatives and beef and pork, they can harm each other, frankly. So we want to be careful about how everything's positioned. But a lot of vegans are going to be happy to have some alternatives, and I think that increases maybe total consumption. Uh, I sometimes say we're going to look at the relative prices of that plant-based alternative relative to more traditional meat-based alternative, and if that plant-based alternative is price attractive, that might crowd out some who are more price conscious between the two. But to me, I think we're going to have a lot of consumers who have made the decision it's one or the other, so they don't substitute perhaps very well for each other. Longer term, I kind of wonder if we don't find some in between mixes that might muddy the water. Can I put together a burger or a pork product that uses a combination of pork and that plant-based alternative? What's that taste like? What's consumers really think about that? I think that's potentially in the mix. We may be a long ways away from it, but maybe that's more competition for us.
Scott, I think that'll do it for us this week. Always great to see you as we look ahead to next week. What are we watching for?
Yeah, so midweek, we're going to get monthly trade data out on Wednesday, and then we finish next week with a jobs report. Let's hope we get a good jobs report next Friday.
Absolutely. Scott, great to see you. Have a wonderful weekend.
Hey, you do the same. Enjoy your time on the farm.
It's always great to be home, and it's great to spend time working with cows. Any day with cows is a good day. All right. To have a weekly livestock market update delivered to your email box at brownfieldagnews.com, you can click subscribe. You can also submit questions and comments. And for market updates, check out brownfieldagnews.com all day long. And for some great podcasts, brownfieldagnews.com/podcast. Have a great weekend. I'm Megan Grebner for Brownfield.